In 1933, a secret meeting took place in one of America's most expensive hotels. The men in that room were not politicians. They were not generals. They were the richest and most powerful businessmen in the United States. And they had one goal: overthrow the American government, remove the president from power, and install a dictator who would protect their wealth. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented in official United States congressional records. And the most shocking part? Not a single person went to prison. The world was burning. To understand what happened, you need to understand the world in 1933. America was in the darkest period of its history. The Great Depression had destroyed everything. 25% of Americans had no job. Families were sleeping in the streets. Banks were collapsing one after another. People were starving in the richest country on earth. And into this chaos, a new president arrived, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. FDR promised something radical. He promised to take power away from the wealthy elite and give it back to the people. He created the New Deal. He raised taxes on the rich. He regulated the banks that had caused the crash. And the wealthiest men in America were furious. They had built their fortunes over decades, and now this man in a wheelchair was threatening to take it all away. So they made a decision. If they could not stop Roosevelt through politics, they would stop him another way. The conspiracy begins. The men behind the plot were not ordinary criminals. These were names that built modern America. Executives connected to some of the largest corporations in the country. Bankers, industrial giants, men who had more money than most governments. Their plan was simple and terrifying. They would raise a private army of 500,000 soldiers, veterans who had fought in World War I and were now desperate, unemployed, and angry. This army would march on Washington. Roosevelt would be given a choice: either hand over power voluntarily and become a figurehead president with no real authority, or be removed by force. And to lead this army, they needed a man the soldiers would follow without question. They chose the most decorated military officer in American history at the time, General Smedley Butler, a man who had fought in wars across 3 continents, a man who had received the Medal of Honor twice, a man who was loved and respected by hundreds of thousands of veterans. What the conspirators did not know about Smedley Butler was one critical thing: he was not a man who could be bought. The general who refused. When the representatives of the conspiracy approached Butler with their offer, he listened carefully. He asked questions. He requested details. He let them believe he was interested. And then he went straight to the United States Congress and told them everything. In November 1934, Butler testified before the House Un-American Activities Committee. He described the plan in precise detail: the names, the money, the timeline, the size of the proposed army. He told Congress that a retired Wall Street bond trader named Gerald McGuire had approached him directly. McGuire had told Butler that the group had already raised $3 million and that they were prepared to spend $300 million more if necessary. Butler told Congress everything, and then the country waited for justice. The cover-up. What happened next was perhaps more disturbing than the plot itself. Congress confirmed that Butler's testimony was credible and accurate. The congressional report stated, and these are their words, that there was evidence that certain individuals had made an attempt to establish a fascist organization in this country. And then almost nothing happened. The most powerful names connected to the conspiracy were quietly removed from the final published report. No one was charged with treason. No one was arrested. No one went to prison. The story disappeared from the newspapers within weeks, and the men who had tried to destroy American democracy returned to their offices, their mansions, and their lives as if nothing had happened. Smedley Butler, the man who had saved the Republic, spent the rest of his life trying to warn Americans about what he had witnessed. He wrote a book. He gave speeches. He told anyone who would listen. But the story was buried, and it stayed buried for decades. What this means today. Here is what we know with absolute certainty. In 1933, a group of wealthy and powerful Americans conspired to violently overthrow the elected government of the United States. The plot was real. Congress confirmed it. The money was real. $3 million in 1933 is equivalent to over $70 million today. The Army was real. 500,000 desperate veterans were the target for recruitment, and the men responsible faced no consequences. Their wealth protected them. Their connections protected them. Their names were removed from the official record. Think about what that means. The most serious crime a citizen can commit against their country, treason, was committed by some of the most powerful people in America. And the system that was supposed to protect ordinary Americans looked the other way. Smedley Butler once said something that has never stopped being true. He said that war is a racket, that the flag follows the dollar. A man who saved American democracy was ignored, and the men who tried to destroy it were protected. That was 1933. The question you should be asking yourself is not whether this happened. We know it happened. The question is, how many times has it happened since? And we simply never found out. If this story is new to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because the most dangerous conspiracies are not the ones that fail. They are the ones that succeed in being forgotten.